17-year-old Marcus Chen is a rising star in junior tennis, competing with ferocious intensity at the USTA National Championship. But his focus isn't on the trophy. It's on the woman who abandoned him 36 hours after his birth, his mother, Diana Chen, a legendary former champion. After 17 years of silence, Marcus uses his talent to force a confrontation, desperate to prove his worth. This is an intense sports drama and coming-of-age story of an athlete whose entire career is fueled by pain and longing. The Last Serve, Part 1, The Abandoned. The photograph was creased and faded, folded so many times that the paper had worn thin along the seams. 17-year-old Marcus Chen kept it tucked inside the front pocket of his tennis bag, right next to the extra grip tape and a lucky coin he'd found on the day he won his first junior tournament. In the photo, a woman in her early 20s stood on a tennis court, her racket held high above her head in triumph, her smile radiant and unrestrained. The name printed in small letters at the bottom read, Diana Chen, USTA National Champion, 1991. His mother. The woman who had left him 36 hours after his birth. Marcus studied that photograph every day before practice, tracing the contours of a face he'd never known, searching for fragments of himself in her features. They had the same dark eyes, the same determined set of the jaw, the same athletic build that seemed engineered for speed and precision. But where Diana Chen had chosen tennis over everything, over him, Marcus had chosen tennis to find her. Now, standing at the entrance of the USTA National Tennis Center in New York, with the roar of nearby crowds echoing through the corridors and the smell of fresh-cut grass mingling with anticipation, Marcus felt the weight of 17 years of preparation pressing down on his shoulders. The USTA Boys 18s National Championship. The tournament Diana had won at his age. The tournament that had launched her into professional stardom and taken her away from him forever. Or so he thought. Marcus Chen, Court 7, 15 minutes. The announcement crackled through the speakers. His coach, Robert Hastings, a former ATP player whose career had been cut short by a knee injury, placed a weathered hand on Marcus's shoulder. You ready for this, kid? Marcus didn't answer immediately. His fingers found the photograph in his bag, pressed against it like a talisman. She'll be watching, won't she? Robert's expression softened with a mixture of concern and understanding. They'd had this conversation before, many times, always ending with Robert's gentle reminder that Diana Chen hadn't been seen at a junior tournament in over 15 years, that her life as a tennis commentator and former champion had taken her far away from the developmental circuits. Maybe, Robert said carefully. But you're not playing for her today. You're playing for yourself. But that was a lie, and they both knew it. Marcus had been raised by his maternal grandmother, Eleanor, in a modest apartment in Queens. Eleanor had been the one to tell him about Diana when he was 8 years old, sitting him down with a cup of hot chocolate and tears in her eyes. She'd explained how her daughter had been a tennis prodigy, how she had sacrificed everything for the sport, how the unexpected pregnancy had come at the worst possible time, right before the biggest tournament of her young career. She made a choice, Eleanor had said, her voice cracking. A terrible, selfish choice. But she made it believing you'd have a better life without her, that I could give you the stability she couldn't. Marcus had cried that night, not understanding how anyone could choose a game over their own child. But the next morning, he'd asked Eleanor to take him to the public courts in Flushing Meadows. He'd picked up a racket for the first time and felt something click into place, a connection to the mother he'd never known, a language they could speak across the void of her absence. Now, 9 years later, he was one of the top junior players in the country. His serve clocked at 125 miles per hour. His forehand had been described by Tennis Magazine as devastatingly precise. His movement on court was fluid,
almost supernatural, as if he could predict where the ball would land before his opponent even made contact. But more than his physical skills, it was his mental game that set him apart. Marcus played with a ferocity that bordered on desperation, as if every point was a question he was asking the universe. Am I good enough? Would you have stayed if you'd known I could do this? Court 7, Robert repeated, bringing Marcus back to the present. Tyler Brennan, you've beaten him before. Marcus nodded. Tyler Brennan was a serve and volley player from California, ranked 3rd in the nation. They'd met twice before, once in a regional tournament where Marcus had won in straight sets, and once at a clay court invitational where Tyler had taken the match in 3 grueling sets that left both players barely able to walk. But more than his physical skills, it was his mental game that set him apart. Marcus played with a ferocity that bordered on desperation, as if every point was a question he was asking the universe. Am I good enough? Would you have stayed if you'd known I could do this? Court 7, Robert repeated, bringing Marcus back to the present. Tyler Brennan, you've beaten him before. Marcus nodded. Tyler Brennan was a serve and volley player from California, ranked 3rd in the nation. They'd met twice before, once in a regional tournament where Marcus had won in straight sets, and once at a clay court invitational where Tyler had taken the match in 3 grueling sets that left both players barely able to walk.
And if he could somehow win 2 more matches after that, he'd be holding the same trophy Diana had held 17 years ago, standing in the same winner's circle, photographed by the same press that had launched her career. And she would have to acknowledge him then. She would have to see that he existed, that he mattered, that tennis, her great love, her chosen priority, flowed through his veins as powerfully as it flowed through hers. The court stretched before him like a rectangle of possibility and pain. Tyler Brennan was already warming up on the far side, his blonde hair tied back in a ponytail, his movements economical and confident. In the stands, maybe 200 people had gathered, parents, coaches, scouts, and a handful of tennis enthusiasts who followed the junior circuit religiously. Marcus scanned the crowd as he began his warm-up, his heart hammering with a hope he tried to suppress. Was she there? Diana Chen, now Diana Valente after her marriage to an Italian businessman, was a regular commentator for the Tennis Channel. She'd won 4 Grand Slam titles during her professional career before retiring at 29. She'd been inducted into the Tennis Hall of Fame. She'd achieved everything she'd left him to achieve. But she wasn't in the stands at Court 7. The umpire called them to the net for the coin toss. Tyler won and elected to serve. As they took their positions, Marcus felt his body shift into the focus state that had become his sanctuary. Here, on the court, the chaos of his emotions could be channeled into something pure and purposeful. Every stroke was a statement. Every point was a declaration of his existence. Tyler's first serve came in hard and flat, hitting the tee with precision. Marcus barely got his racket on it, sending the return long. Love 15. But Marcus didn't panic. He'd studied Tyler's patterns, knew that he liked to establish dominance early with his serve, but sometimes got tentative if the return game was solid. The second point was a rally, both players trading baseline shots with increasing pace. Marcus moved Tyler side to side, setting up for his trademark inside-out forehand. When the opportunity came, he unleashed it, the ball screaming across the court and catching the line. 15 all. The match settled into a rhythm. Tyler's serve was formidable, but Marcus was reading it better than he had in their previous meetings. He broke in the 6th game, taking a 4-2 lead, only to have Tyler break back immediately. At 5-5, Marcus felt the first whisper of doubt creep in. What if he lost in the first round? What if all these years of training, all this effort to become worthy of his mother's attention, ended here on Court 7 with a handful of disinterested spectators and no acknowledgement of his existence? Focus, he muttered to himself, bouncing the ball before his serve. 1 point at a time.
He won the first set in a tiebreak, 7-6-4. Tyler took the second set 6-4, his improved baseline game proving more effective than Marcus had anticipated. As they sat during the changeover before the third set, Marcus felt exhaustion creeping into his legs. The humid New York summer air was thick, oppressive, making every breath feel inadequate. Robert caught his eye from the stands and made a simple gesture, pointing to his head, then his heart. Mind and heart. It was their signal, a reminder that Marcus had both the tactical intelligence and the emotional drive to win. But did he have the emotional drive for the right reasons? As Marcus stood to begin the third set, he forced himself to confront the question he'd been avoiding. What if winning this tournament didn't bring Diana back? What if she didn't care, even if he held the same trophy she'd once held? What if her absence had never been about him not being good enough, but about her being incapable of being a mother? The ball came at him and instinct took over. Part 2. The Crucible. The third set was a war of attrition. Both players held serve through the first 8 games, each one becoming more physically demanding than the last. Marcus's shirt was soaked through with sweat. His legs burned. His shoulder ached from the repetitive violence of his serve. But Tyler looked equally spent, his movements losing some of their crisp precision. At 4-4, Marcus saw his opening. Tyler's second serve lacked its usual depth, and Marcus stepped inside the baseline, crushing a forehand return that passed Tyler before he could react. Love 15. The next point was a long rally that ended with Tyler netting a backhand. Love 30. 2 more points and Marcus would be serving for the match. But Tyler fought back, hitting 2 aces to reach 30 all. On the next point, they traded ground strokes for what felt like an eternity, neither willing to give an inch, until Marcus tried to end it with a drop shot that didn't quite clear the net. 40-30, Tyler's advantage. Marcus crouched low as Tyler prepared to serve, his mind calculating angles and probabilities. The serve came down the tee, Marcus's weaker side, but he managed to dig it out, sending a defensive slice back to Tyler. Tyler scooped up a short ball, and Marcus pounced, moving forward and drilling a passing shot down the line. Deuce. The game extended through 6 more deuces, each point a small lifetime of effort and determination. Finally, Marcus earned 2 break points.
On the second one, Tyler served and volleyed, but Marcus threaded a passing shot so close to the line that Tyler didn't even attempt to reach it. "Out!" Tyler called, but the line judge said nothing. "The ball was good," the umpire announced. Marcus had broken. He was serving for the match at 5-4. As he walked to the baseline, Marcus's hands were shaking. This was it, the first step on the path that might lead him to Diana. But more than that, it was a test of whether all the hours on the practice court, all the sacrifices, all the determination that had defined his 17 years had been enough. His first serve was long, the adrenaline making him overhit. The second serve was more conservative, and Tyler attacked it, hitting a sharp return that Marcus barely managed to handle, sending up a high defensive ball. Tyler moved in for an overhead, but Marcus had already started sprinting back, somehow getting to the ball and lobbing it deep. Tyler had to scramble back, hitting his own desperate lob. Marcus smelled blood. He let the ball bounce, then crushed a forehand that Tyler had no chance to reach. 15-love. The next point was shorter. Marcus served wide to Tyler's forehand, came in behind it, and put away a crisp volley. 30-love. 2 points from victory, Marcus felt time slow down. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears, could feel the humid air pressing against his skin, could sense the weight of all his unspoken longing coalescing into this moment. His first serve was perfect, a slider that caught the outside corner of the service box. Tyler lunged, but couldn't get his racket on it. 40-love, triple match point. Marcus took his time before the next serve, bouncing the ball, trying to calm his breathing. He thought of Eleanor, who had raised him with unconditional love despite the pain of her daughter's abandonment. He thought of Robert, who believed in him when he was just a skinny 12-year-old with more determination than talent. He thought of the countless hours on the practice court, the blisters and the muscle aches and the mental anguish of pushing himself beyond what seemed possible. And he thought of Diana, the ghost who had haunted every match, every tournament, every victory and defeat of his young life. The serve went in, and Tyler returned it deep to Marcus's backhand. They rallied, both cautious now, neither wanting to make the error that would end it. Marcus moved Tyler from corner to corner, patient, waiting for the right ball. When it came, a slightly short forehand, Marcus didn't hesitate. He stepped inside the baseline and ripped a forehand up the line that Tyler could only watch. The ball caught the line. Marcus had won. Tyler came to the net immediately, shaking Marcus's hand with genuine respect. "Great match, man. You're playing scary good." Marcus barely heard him. He looked up at the stands, searching one more time for a face he knew wouldn't be there. Eleanor was there, beaming with pride, tears streaming down her face. Robert was applauding, nodding his approval, but Diana Chen was nowhere to be seen. As Marcus packed his bag, a tournament official approached him. "Great win. There's someone who wants to meet you in the players' lounge." Marcus's heart stopped. "Who?" "Didn't give a name, just said to tell you it's important." The walk to the players' lounge felt like moving through water. Marcus's mind raced with possibilities. Could it be? After all these years, after all this silence, could Diana finally be reaching out? The lounge was mostly empty. Just a few players recovering from their matches, draped across couches with ice packs and energy drinks. And there, sitting at a table in the corner, was a woman in her late 30s with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing designer sunglasses despite being indoors. But it wasn't Diana. "Marcus Chen?" The woman stood, extending her hand. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, agent with Premier Sports Management."
"I watched your match today. I'm impressed." The disappointment crashed over Marcus like a wave. He shook her hand automatically, his voice flat. "Thank you. I know this isn't the best timing, but I wanted to introduce myself before the tournament gets deeper. You've got a real chance to win this thing, and when you do, there are going to be opportunities." "I need to go," Marcus interrupted. "My grandmother is waiting." He walked out before Jennifer could respond, his eyes burning with tears he refused to let fall. What had he expected? That winning one match in the first round would somehow summon Diana from whatever life she'd built without him? That tennis, the thing she'd chosen over him, would somehow become the bridge that connected them? Eleanor was waiting outside, her arms opening wide as Marcus approached. He let himself be held, feeling suddenly like the 8-year-old boy who had first learned about his mother's choice. "I'm so proud of you," Eleanor whispered. "You were magnificent out there." "She wasn't watching," Marcus said into her grandmother's shoulder. Eleanor pulled back, her hands on his cheeks, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I was watching. Robert was watching. You played for yourself today, Marcus. Not for her, for yourself." But Marcus couldn't accept that comfort. He had played for Diana. Every stroke, every point, every ounce of effort had been an attempt to prove himself worthy of the mother who had abandoned him. And she hadn't even noticed. That night, in the small hotel room he shared with Robert, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed with congratulatory texts from friends and fellow players. Social media was lighting up with highlights from his match. Tennis recruiting websites were updating his ranking and projections, but none of it meant anything without Diana. "Can't sleep?" Robert's voice came from the other bed. "Did you know," Marcus said quietly, "that the year she won this tournament, Diana beat 3 top 10 players? She was 17, just like me. They said she was the future of American tennis." "I know the story, Marcus." "And then she got pregnant, and she had to choose between the baby and tennis, between me and her dream." Marcus's voice was hollow. "She chose tennis. And you know what? She was right. She had an incredible career. 4 Grand Slams, world number 2, Hall of Fame. If she'd kept me, none of that would have happened.
You don't know that. Yes, I do. Marcus sat up, his silhouette visible in the dim light filtering through the curtains. And the fucked up thing is, I've spent my whole life trying to prove I was worth keeping. Like if I could just be good enough at the thing she loved, she'd realize she made a mistake. She'd come back. Robert was quiet for a long moment. Well, what if she does come back, Marcus? What if you win this tournament and she reaches out? What then? Then...
I want to know.
You have your mother's forehand. Keep winning. We need to talk. DV. Diana Valente. Marcus's hands started shaking so badly he almost dropped the phone. She had been watching. She had seen him. After 17 years of silence, 6 simple sentences had appeared on his screen. And suddenly, everything he'd been working toward felt terrifyingly real. Robert, he said, his voice cracking. She texted me. Part 3. The Reckoning. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He stared at the text message until the words lost meaning, until they became just shapes on a screen. Diana had been watching. She had recognized something of herself in his game. She wanted to talk. But she hadn't said she was proud. She hadn't said she regretted leaving. She'd made a clinical observation about his forehand and expressed a need to talk, as if 17 years of absence could be bridged with a casual conversation. By the time morning light crept through the hotel curtains, Marcus had crafted and deleted dozens of responses. Each one felt either too desperate or too cold, too revealing or too guarded. Finally, at 6 a.m., he typed out, "I'm here all week, Marcus," and hit send before he could second-guess himself. The response came within minutes. "I know. I'll be at your quarterfinal match. Win today first." Marcus showed the exchange to Robert over breakfast. His coach's expression was troubled as he read the messages. "How do you feel?" Robert asked, handing back the phone. Terrified, upset, relieved. All of it at once. She's been able to reach out this entire time, and she chose to wait until I won one match at a tournament she cares about? Maybe she's been following your career all along. Maybe this tournament is significant for her too. Or maybe she only cares now that I'm good enough to be interesting. Marcus's voice was bitter. Either way, I have to win today. I have to make it to the quarterfinals. His opponent in the round of 16 was Connor Wright, a big-serving player from Texas with a booming forehand and a reputation for choking in big moments. On paper, Marcus should have been able to handle him, but as Marcus warmed up on court 3, his mind kept drifting to Diana, to the quarterfinal match she'd promised to attend, to the conversation they'd need to have. Connor won the first set 6-3,
overwhelming Marcus with aggressive play that the younger player seemed unable to counter. Marcus's footwork was sloppy, his shot selection poor, his concentration fractured. At the changeover, Robert's voice cut through his mental chaos. "What are you doing out there?" You're trying to play 2 matches at once. The one today and the one 2 days from now. You're trying to play tennis and process 17 years of abandonment simultaneously. And you know what? You can't do both." Marcus looked at his coach, seeing the frustration and concern in his weathered face. "You want to face your mother?" Robert continued. "You want that conversation? Then you need to win today. Not next match, not the match after that. Today, right now. This moment is the only one that matters." Something in Robert's words penetrated Marcus's emotional fog. He was right. Everything Marcus had worked for would be meaningless if he couldn't focus on the immediate challenge. Diana was a ghost that had haunted him for 17 years. She could wait 2 more hours. The second set was different. Marcus dialed in his focus, letting muscle memory and years of training take over. He broke Connor in the first game, then held serve. His ground strokes found their rhythm, his serve found its spots, his movement became fluid again. He took the set, 6-2. The third set was a showcase. Marcus played some of the best tennis of his life, reading Connor's patterns and dismantling them systematically.
He won 6-1, and as he shook Connor's hand at the net, he felt a surge of confidence that had been missing earlier. As Marcus left the court, he noticed a figure standing in the shadows of the stadium tunnel. For a moment, his heart leaped, but it was Jennifer Walsh, the agent from the day before. "Better," she said, falling in the step beside him. "Much better. That third set is the player I came here to see." "I'm not interested in representation right now," Marcus said, his tone polite but firm. "I understand, but I want you to know that Premier Sports Management has represented some of the biggest names in tennis, including Diana Chen," Marcus finished. "I know. I've done my research on your company." Jennifer smiled. "Of course you have. Look, I'm not going to pressure you, but I will tell you this. Diana is a complicated woman. Brilliant, driven, but complicated. If you're looking for easy answers or simple reconciliation, you might be disappointed." Marcus stopped walking. "You know? That she's your mother?" "Yes. She mentioned it when I told her I was coming here to watch the tournament. She was cautious about it. Not cold exactly, but not warm either." "Why are you telling me this?" Jennifer's expression softened. "Because 17 years ago, I watched a young woman make an impossible choice. I was her agent then, too, just starting out. Diana was the first client who really put me on the map. And I saw what that choice cost her, even as she won everything she dreamed of winning. I just want you to be prepared for the conversation you're about to have." "What did it cost her?" Marcus asked, hungry for any glimpse into Diana's inner world. "That's her story to tell. But I will say this. Victory and happiness aren't always the same thing. Diana won a lot, Marcus."
"But I'm not sure she was ever happy." The words stayed with Marcus as he returned to the hotel, as he iced his shoulder and reviewed video of his next opponent, as he tried to eat dinner and settle his nerves for the next day's match. Diana had won everything, but perhaps lost something essential in the process. Did that make her sacrifice more tragic or more pointless? That night, Marcus finally responded to the messages that had been piling up on his phone. Friends from school, fellow players, even a few journalists asking for interviews. But there was one message he'd been avoiding, from his grandmother Eleanor. "Sweetheart, I saw the news about Diana reaching out. Please call me when you can. I love you. You don't owe her anything, remember that. Grandma." Marcus dialed her number and Eleanor answered on the first ring. "Marcus, how are you feeling?" "Confused," he admitted. "Excited and upset and confused." "All valid feelings," Eleanor said. "I wish I could be there with you." "Me too," Marcus's voice taut. "Grandma, was she always like this? Always putting tennis first?" There was a long pause. "Your mother. Diana was driven in a way I'd never seen before. Even as a little girl, she would practice until her hands bled. I tried to get her to rest, to have balance in her life, but she was obsessed. And when she started winning, when the success came, it validated everything. The sacrifice seemed worth it. Even sacrificing me? Oh, Marcus, she thought she was doing the right thing. She believed you'd be better off with me, that she couldn't give you the life you deserved while chasing her dreams. I've spent 17 years being upset with her for that choice, but I've also tried to understand it. She was 21 years old, at the peak of her potential, terrified that having a child would end everything she had worked for. Did you tell her it didn't have to be all or nothing?
But Diana doesn't see the world in shades of gray. For her, it's always been about complete commitment or nothing. That's what made her great at tennis, and that's what made her fail as a mother. They talked for another hour, Eleanor sharing stories about Diana's childhood that Marcus had never heard, about the young girl who would hit against the garage door for hours, who watched tennis matches with the intensity of a scientist studying experiments, who seemed to have been born with a racket in her hand and a fire in her belly. The Diana you're going to meet, Eleanor said as they were ending the call, might not be the Diana you've imagined all these years. People are complicated, sweetheart, even the ones who hurt us, especially the ones who hurt us. Marcus lay in bed that night, his mind racing through scenarios for his conversation with Diana. Would she apologize? Would she defend her choice? Would she express any regret at all? Or would she simply view their reunion as a networking opportunity, one former champion connecting with a rising player? And more importantly, what did Marcus want from the encounter? Closure? Forgiveness? An explanation? Or did he simply want Diana to see him, to acknowledge that she'd left behind a real person with real pain, not just an abstraction that had complicated her career trajectory? His phone buzzed with one more message before he finally fell asleep. "You're in the quarterfinals if you win tomorrow. I've cleared my schedule. I'll be there. DV." No encouragement, no expression of pride or affection, just a statement of fact and an attendance confirmation, as if they were colleagues arranging a business meeting rather than a mother and son preparing for their first face-to-face encounter in 17 years. Marcus fell asleep with the photograph of Diana clutched in his hand, the same photograph he'd carried through hundreds of matches.
Tomorrow he would face Max Kowalski, the number 2 seed and one of the toughest competitors on the junior circuit. And if he won, he would finally meet the woman in the photograph, not as an imagined ideal or a ghost, but as a real, flawed, complicated person. The question was whether either of them was ready for that encounter. Part 4. The Breaking Point. Max Kowalski was a grinder. The son of a Polish immigrant father and a Korean mother, both of whom had pushed him toward tennis from the age of 4, Max played with mechanical efficiency and relentless consistency. He didn't have the biggest serve or the most powerful ground strokes, but he never beat himself. Playing Max was like hitting against a wall that occasionally hit back with interest. Marcus knew this match would be different from his previous ones. Connor Wright had cracked under pressure. Tyler Brennan had been more talented, but less disciplined. Max was neither talented enough to overwhelm you, nor weak enough to break. He was simply there, point after point, game after game, forcing you to win it rather than waiting for you to lose it. As Marcus walked onto Court 1, a larger stadium than his previous matches, with maybe 1,000 people in attendance, he scanned the crowd with a mixture of hope and dread. Was Diana there yet? The match was scheduled for 2 p.m., still early enough that she might arrive late. The warm-up felt surreal. Marcus's hands moved through the familiar routines, forehands, backhands, serves, volleys, but his mind was elsewhere, searching the stands between every drill, looking for a face he'd only seen in photographs and old tennis footage. "Focus," Robert called from the stands. "Right here, right now." But focusing was impossible. Every sound from the crowd made Marcus's head turn. Every flash of movement in the entryway made his heart race.
By the time the match began, his nerves were frayed, his concentration scattered. Max won the first 4 games, capitalizing on Marcus's errors and playing his typical steady game. At 0-4, during the changeover, Marcus finally forced himself to confront reality. Diana wasn't coming. Not now. Maybe not ever. She'd said she'd be at the quarterfinals, but he hadn't even reached that round yet. This was the round of 16. He'd confused the schedule in his emotional chaos. The realization was both crushing and liberating. He had another match to win before Diana would even appear. This match wasn't about her. It couldn't be about her. It had to be about him and Max and the next point. Something shifted in Marcus's approach. The desperation that had plagued his early games transformed into determination. He broke Max in the 5th game, then held serve, then broke again. By the time the set ended, Marcus had won 6 straight games to take it 6-4. The second set was a war. Max raised his level, serving better, and taking more risks with his ground strokes. But Marcus was locked in now, playing the kind of focused, intelligent tennis that had made him one of the top juniors in the country. They traded holds until 5-5, when Marcus created 2 breakpoints with a series of blistering returns. On the second breakpoint, they played a 27-shot rally that had the crowd on their feet. Marcus moved Max from side to side, constructing the point like a chess player, waiting for the right moment to strike. When Max's backhand finally landed short, Marcus moved in and crushed a forehand winner down the line. He served out the match at 6-5, clinching it with an ace down the tee. As the ball hit the back fence, Marcus didn't feel the joy of victory. He felt exhaustion and relief and a gnawing anxiety about what came next. Max was gracious in defeat, shaking Marcus's hand firmly. "You're going to win this thing," he said. "I can feel it."
"You've got something special." Marcus thanked him, but the words felt hollow. Special. Diana had been special too, and her special talent had been more important than raising her son. In the locker room, Marcus showered and changed, his movements automatic. His quarterfinal match was scheduled for 11 a.m. the next day against Rafael Martinez, a clay court specialist from Spain who had somehow adapted his game to the hard courts. It would be a tough match, but Marcus had beaten him before in a close 3-setter. More importantly, Diana would be watching. That evening, Robert suggested they have dinner away from the tennis center, somewhere Marcus could decompress and think about something other than the tournament. They ended up at a small Italian restaurant in Queens, not far from where Marcus had grown up. "You played well today," Robert said over pasta and red wine, just a glass for Marcus, who was still underage, but old enough that Robert allowed occasional exceptions. "Best tennis of the tournament so far." "It didn't feel that way," Marcus admitted. "The first 4 games, I was a mess. I kept thinking she was going to show up, that I'd look over and see her in the stands, and I'd have to process that while playing. But then you settled in." "Yeah, because I realized she wasn't coming to that match. Tomorrow's different. Tomorrow she'll be there, watching, judging, comparing me to the player she was at my age." Robert leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with the careful attention he usually reserved for analyzing opponents. "Let me ask you something. When you're out there tomorrow, playing Martinez with Diana in the stands, who are you going to be playing for?" "What do you mean?"
He took a sip of wine, feeling its warmth spread through his chest. "Honestly, I don't know. I've spent so long playing for her, trying to become good enough that she'd notice me, that I'm not sure I know how to play for any other reason." "Then tomorrow might be the day you figure that out," Robert said. "Because I'll tell you something about playing for someone else. It's exhausting. It makes every match about more than tennis. Every point becomes weighted with emotional significance that has nothing to do with the game itself. And eventually, that weight crushes you." "Is that what happened to you?" Marcus asked. Robert rarely spoke about his own playing career, the promising start and the injury-shortened finish. "Yeah," Robert admitted. "I was playing for my father, trying to prove I was worth the investment he'd made in my training. When I blew out my knee, I felt like I'd failed him more than I'd failed myself. Took me years to realize I'd never really been playing for me at all. They finished dinner in contemplative silence, then walked back to the hotel through the warm summer night. Queens was alive with the sounds of a diverse city, Spanish and Korean and Chinese mixing with English, music pouring from open windows, the smell of a dozen different cuisines mingling in the air. This was Marcus's world. Not the rarefied air of professional tennis, but the grounded reality of immigrant families and working-class neighborhoods, of people who showed up every day and did their best without expecting glory or fame. Eleanor was part of this world. She'd worked 2 jobs to support Marcus and his tennis, never complaining, always there with encouragement and love. Diana had come from this world too, but she'd left it behind, chasing something bigger and shinier. Had that chase been worth it? Or had she gained the world and lost her soul? Back at the hotel, Marcus found a note slipped under his door.
His hands trembled as he opened it, hoping for something from Diana. But it was from Jennifer Walsh. Lunch tomorrow after your match? Win or lose, we should talk. J.W. Marcus tossed the note on his bed, frustrated by the presumption that he'd be available for a business lunch the day after the most emotionally significant match of his life. But then again, maybe that's how Diana saw the world. Every interaction as a transaction, every relationship as a potential opportunity. His phone buzzed. This time, it was Diana. I've been watching the draw, but you could face Diana Chen in the finals. No relation, I checked. But wouldn't that be something? You and another Chen fighting for the title I won 17 years ago. Marcus stared at the message, searching for any hint of warmth or personal connection. There was none. Just strategic observation and historical irony, as if they were 2 tennis analysts discussing the tournament rather than a mother and son preparing for their first meeting. He typed and deleted several responses before finally settling on 1 match at a time. See you tomorrow. Her response was immediate. Good mindset. That's what winners do. DV. Winners. Everything was about winning for Diana. Not about the joy of playing, not about the relationships built through sport, not about the lessons learned in defeat, just winning, as if that was the only thing that mattered, the only measure of a life well lived. Marcus fell asleep thinking about Robert's question, who are you playing for? And for the first time in his tennis career, he genuinely didn't know the answer. Part 5. The Confrontation. The morning of the quarter-final match, Marcus woke up before his alarm, his stomach churning with anxiety. He tried to eat breakfast, but could only manage a banana and some toast. Robert watched him with concern, but said nothing, understanding that some internal battles had to be fought alone. They arrived at the tennis center 2 hours before the scheduled match time. Marcus went through his warm-up routine with mechanical precision, stretching, shadow swings, a light jog, but his mind was elsewhere, counting down the minutes until he'd see Diana in person for the first time. At 10 a.m., as Marcus was changing into his match clothes, his phone rang. Unknown number. His heart hammered as he answered. Marcus? It's Diana. Her voice was lower than he'd imagined, with a slight rasp that came from years of shouting across tennis courts and speaking into microphones. It was familiar somehow, as if he'd heard it in his dreams, even though he had no actual memory of her. Hi, he managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm at the center. I wanted to call before the match because... She paused, and Marcus heard her take a breath. Because I wasn't sure if you'd want to meet before or after you played. I didn't want to throw you off your game. After, Marcus said, surprised by the firmness in his own voice. Win or lose, we'll talk after. Good. That's good. Another pause. Marcus, I know this is complicated. I know I have no right to insert myself into your life after all this time, but I've been following your career for the past 2 years, and when I saw you were playing in this tournament... 2 years? Marcus interrupted.
You've been watching me for 2 years and you're only reaching out now? I didn't know if I should reach out at all. I didn't know if you'd want to hear from me, if my presence would help or hurt. I gave up the right to be your mother a long time ago. You did, Marcus agreed, his anger surfacing. You chose tennis over me before I was even 2 days old. You decided your career was more important than your son.
So, why now? Why here? Because I see you making the same choices I made, Diana said, her voice gaining strength. I watch you play, and I see someone who's brilliant and driven and completely consumed by tennis. And I wonder if you're doing it for the right reasons, or if you're caught in the same trap that caught me. What trap? The trap of thinking that winning will fill the empty spaces inside you. That if you're just good enough, successful enough, you'll finally feel complete. Diana's voice cracked. I won 4 Grand Slams, Marcus. I was ranked number 2 in the world. I've been inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I spent most of my adult life feeling like I'd made a terrible mistake. Like I'd traded everything that mattered for trophies that sit in a case and mean nothing. Marcus felt tears burning his eyes. Then why didn't you come back? Why didn't you try to be part of my life? Because I was a coward, Diana said, simply. Because I convinced myself you were better off without me. Because every year that passed made it harder to reach out, harder to admit that I'd been wrong. And because... She trailed off. Because what? Because I was ashamed. Of the choice I made, of the woman I'd become, of the fact that I'd let tennis consume everything good in my life. How do you reach out to your son when you have nothing to offer except apologies and regret? They were both silent for a moment, the weight of 17 years of absence pressing down on the phone connection between them. I need to go warm up, Marcus finally said. I know. Good luck today. Not that you need luck. You're talented enough without it. But still, Diana's voice softened. I'm proud of you, Marcus. I know I have no right to be, but I am. The call ended, and Marcus sat in the locker room, his hands shaking, his mind reeling. Diana was ashamed. Diana had regrets. Diana thought she'd made a terrible mistake. These revelations should have brought comfort, but instead, they brought confusion. How was he supposed to process 17 years of abandonment when the person who'd abandoned him was suffering too? Robert found him 10 minutes later, still sitting in the same spot. You okay? She called. We talked. She said... Marcus struggled to find the words. She said she regrets it, leaving me. That all the winning didn't make up for it. How do you feel? I don't know. Upset that it took her this long to figure it out? Sad that she's been suffering too? I don't know, Robert. I wanted her to be a monster, someone I could hate cleanly, but she's just broken, like me. You're not broken, kid. Aren't I? I've spent 17 years playing tennis to get the attention of someone who left me. That's not exactly healthy. Robert sat down beside him. No, it's not. But here's the thing. You can't change why you started playing. You can only decide why you keep playing. So today, against Martinez, with Diana watching, you get to choose. Are you playing for her approval? Or are you playing because you love the game? Because you want to test yourself? Because tennis has become part of who you are independent of her? Marcus stood up, feeling something shift inside him. Robert was right. He couldn't undo the past or change his motivations from years ago, but he could choose what this match meant, what his tennis meant going forward. I'm playing for me, Marcus said, the words feeling both true and terrifying. Today, I'm playing for me. The walk to the court felt different this time. Marcus's nerves were still jangling, but underneath the anxiety was a foundation of clarity. He was about to play tennis, a game he loved, a challenge he'd prepared for, an opportunity to test himself against a skilled opponent.
Diana's presence might add emotional complexity, but it didn't change the fundamental nature of what he was about to do. Court 1 was more crowded than it had been for his previous match. Word had spread about Marcus's potential, and tennis fans were gathering to see if the hype was justified. And there, sitting in a special box usually reserved for VIPs and commentators, was Diana Chen. Marcus forced himself to look at her, to see the real person instead of the photograph he'd carried for so long. She was wearing dark jeans and a white blouse, her hair shorter than in the old pictures, with traces of gray at the temples. She looked elegant and professional, and somehow smaller than he'd imagined. When their eyes met, she gave a small wave, tentative and uncertain. Marcus nodded in acknowledgement, then turned his attention to Rafael Martinez, who was already warming up on the other side of the net. The match began, and Marcus felt himself settling into a zone of concentration he'd never quite accessed before. Every shot was intentional, every movement purposeful. He wasn't playing to impress Diana or to prove anything to her. He was playing because this was what he did, who he was, independent of her approval or disapproval. Martinez was in fine form, his clay court patience translating well to the hard court surface. He kept the ball deep, waited for short balls, and then pounced with heavy topspin forehands. The first set went to a tiebreak, which Marcus won 7-5 with a series of clutch serves. During the changeover, Marcus caught Diana's eye again. She was leaning forward, completely absorbed in the match, her expression intense and focused. It was the same expression Marcus saw in the mirror when he watched video of his own matches. They had that in common, the intensity, the inability to watch tennis casually. The second set was more dominant. Marcus found his rhythm, breaking Martinez twice to take it 6-2.
As he served for the match at 5-2, Marcus felt a surprising sense of peace. Win or lose, he'd played well. He'd competed hard. He'd done justice to all the hours of practice and preparation. And more importantly, he'd done it for himself. His serve at 40-30 was an ace, clipping the outside corner of the service box so perfectly that Martinez could only watch it pass. Match over. Marcus was in the semifinals. The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus shook Martinez's hand, thanked the umpire and ball kids, and waved to the crowd. Then, because he couldn't avoid it any longer, he looked up at Diana's box. She was standing, applauding, with tears streaming down her face. Their eyes locked, and Marcus felt 17 years of longing and anger and confusion collide in his chest. This was the moment he'd been working toward, but now that it was here, he had no idea what to do with it. As Marcus left the court, a tournament official intercepted him. Miss Chen asked if you'd meet her in the players' lounge after you've had a chance to cool down. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. He showered quickly, changed into casual clothes, and tried to prepare himself for a conversation he'd imagined thousands of times, but never truly believed would happen. Part 6. The Truth. The players' lounge was mostly empty, just a few players recovering from their matches in quiet corners. Diana sat at a table by the window, a coffee cup in front of her, her hands wrapped around it as if drawing warmth, even though the day was hot. Marcus approached slowly, each step feeling weighted with significance. When he reached the table, Diana stood, and for a moment they simply looked at each other, mother and son, strangers who shared blood and bone structure and an obsession with tennis. "Thank you for coming," Diana said, her voice thick with emotion. "I wasn't sure if you would." "I wasn't sure either," Marcus admitted. He sat down across from her, maintaining the distance of the table between them.
"But I have questions. 17 years of questions. I'll answer whatever I can." Diana sat back down, her hands still clutching the coffee cup. "Though I'm not sure my answers will be satisfying." "Why tennis?" Marcus asked, deciding to start with the most fundamental question. Why was it more important than me? Diana closed her eyes, and Marcus saw the pain etched in the lines around her mouth. It wasn't more important. It was just... She paused, searching for words. I'd spent my entire life, from age 6, working toward one goal, to be a professional tennis player. My parents sacrificed everything for that dream.
We lived in a tiny apartment because all our money went to coaching and tournaments. My father worked 2 jobs. My mother, your grandmother, put her own dreams aside to drive me to practice and sit through endless matches. So, you felt obligated to them? I felt obligated to not waste their sacrifice, Diana corrected. And more than that, I didn't know who I was without tennis. It was my identity, my purpose, my reason for existing. When I got pregnant at 21, I was terrified, not just of losing my career, but of losing myself. You could have figured out how to do both, Marcus said, hearing the hurt in his own voice. Other athletes have kids. Other women have children and careers. You're right, some do, but I knew myself well enough to know that I couldn't do both and be excellent at either. Tennis demanded everything from me. Complete focus, total dedication, no distractions. And a child deserves better than a mother who's always half somewhere else, who's always prioritizing practice over parent-teacher conferences. So you chose tennis. I chose tennis, Diana agreed, tears spilling down her cheeks. I told myself I was making the selfless choice, that you'd be better off with your grandmother, who could give you stability and attention. But the truth is, I was also making the selfish choice. I was choosing the thing I knew, the thing I was good at, the thing that made me feel valuable. Marcus felt his own tears threatening. Did you ever regret it? Every day, Diana whispered. Every single day for 17 years. I'd win a match, and the first thing I'd think was, I wonder how old he is now. I wonder what he looks like. I wonder if he hates me. I'd see kids at tournaments with their parents, and I'd feel this hole in my chest that no trophy could fill. Then why didn't you come back? Why didn't you reach out? Diana shook her head. Pride, shame, fear, all of it. How do you come back after abandoning your child? What do you say? Sorry, I was wrong. Can we start over? It felt impossible, and the longer I waited, the more impossible it became. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Diana's admission settling over them. Marcus had wanted her to suffer, had wanted his absence to hurt her, and now, confronted with the reality of her pain, he found it brought no satisfaction. Jennifer Walsh told me that victory and happiness aren't the same thing, Marcus said, that you won everything, but maybe lost something essential. Jennifer's right, Diana said. I had an incredible career. I achieved things most players only dream of, but I did it at the cost of connection, of family, of the kind of love that matters more than any ranking or trophy. My marriage fell apart 3 years ago because I never learned how to let anyone get close. My relationship with my mother, your grandmother, is still strained because she's never forgiven me for leaving you. Have you forgiven yourself? Diana met his eyes. No, I don't think I ever will. But I'm trying to figure out how to move forward without forgiveness. How to acknowledge my mistakes and still find some way to have a meaningful life. Is that why you're here now? To find meaning? I'm here because I saw you play 2 years ago at a regional tournament.
I was there for work, doing commentary, and someone mentioned a promising junior named Marcus Chen. I looked into it, realized who you were, and watched you play. And Marcus, you were brilliant, but you were also haunted. You played with this desperate intensity that I recognized because I'd seen it in my own game. You played like someone trying to prove something, and I realized you were playing to prove something to me. So what? You felt guilty and decided to reach out? I felt responsible, Diana corrected. I gave you my genes, my obsessive drive, my inability to find satisfaction in anything but winning. And I thought, if I can just talk to him, if I can just tell him what I learned too late, maybe I can spare him some of the pain I caused myself. What did you learn too late? Diana leaned forward, her eyes intense. That tennis is a beautiful game, but it's just a game. That winning feels good for about 5 minutes,
And then you're looking ahead to the next tournament, the next victory, never satisfied. That the people who love you, really love you, are worth more than any trophy. And that talent without joy is just another form of suffering. I do feel joy when I play, Marcus protested. Do you? Or do you feel relief when you win and devastation when you lose? That's not joy, Marcus. That's addiction. That's using tennis to fill an empty space that tennis can't actually fill. Her words hit him like a physical blow. How many times had he felt that exact pattern, the temporary high of victory, followed quickly by anxiety about the next match, the crushing weight of losses that felt like personal failures, the inability to simply enjoy playing for its own sake. What am I supposed to do? Quit tennis? Pretend I don't care about winning? No, Diana said firmly. You keep playing. You keep competing.
But you do it for different reasons. You play because you love the challenge, because tennis brings out the best version of yourself, because the process of improving and competing and testing yourself is inherently valuable, not because you think winning will finally make you feel whole. Is that what you do now? Diana smiled sadly. I'm trying. I commentate on matches, and I try to appreciate the beauty of the game instead of just analyzing who's winning. I work with young players, and I try to teach them balance instead of the obsession that defined my career. I'm not very good at it yet, but I'm trying. Marcus sat back, processing everything Diana had shared. She wasn't the monster he'd imagined, but she wasn't the ideal mother he'd dreamed of either. She was a complicated, flawed person who had made a terrible choice and spent nearly 2 decades living with the consequences. I don't know if I could forgive you, Marcus said quietly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I understand, Diana said. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know the truth. And I wanted to tell you that you don't have to carry my mistakes forward. You can choose differently than I did. What if I win this tournament? What if I win the same title you won and launch a professional career just like yours? Would that prove something? It would prove you're talented, which I already know. But it wouldn't prove you're worthy of love or that I made a mistake leaving you. Those things are already true, independent of any tournament results. They talked for another hour, the conversation ranging from tennis strategy to family history to Diana's failed marriage and Marcus's life with Eleanor. It wasn't comfortable, and there were long silences filled with the weight of lost years, but it was real. Finally, as the sun began to set outside the windows, Diana stood. You have a semifinal match tomorrow. You should rest. Marcus stood as well.
Are you going to watch? Do you want me to? He thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, I do. But I need you to understand that I'm not playing for you anymore. I'm playing for myself. Diana smiled, and for the first time, Marcus saw genuine warmth in her expression. Good. That's exactly how it should be. She moved as if to hug him, then stopped, uncertain. Marcus closed the distance and embraced her awkwardly, feeling the unfamiliarity of her body against his. She smelled like expensive perfume and coffee, and she held him tightly, as if trying to compress 17 years of missed embraces into one moment. Thank you for talking to me, Diana whispered. Even if this is the only conversation we ever have, thank you. It won't be the only one, Marcus said, surprising himself. I'm still upset. I'm still hurt. But I want to try to see if we can figure out some kind of relationship. Diana pulled back, her eyes wet with tears. I'd like that. Whatever you're comfortable with, at whatever pace you need. I have 17 years of absence to make up for. I can be patient now. They exchanged phone numbers, real numbers this time, instead of mysterious texts. As Marcus left the players' lounge, he felt lighter somehow, as if a weight he'd been carrying for so long had shifted, not disappeared, but repositioned in a way that made it easier to bear. Robert was waiting outside, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. How'd it go? It went. It wasn't what I expected, but I think it was what I needed. You ready for tomorrow? Yeah, I'm ready. But, Robert, tomorrow, I'm just playing tennis. Not trying to prove anything, not trying to impress anyone. Just competing because I love the game. Robert smiled. That's the Marcus I've been waiting to see. Part 7. The Championship. The semifinal match against Diana Chen, no relation to Diana, as his mother had noted, was a completely different experience.
Marcus played with a freedom he'd never felt before, taking risks and enjoying the chess match of high-level competition. He won in straight sets, 6-4, 6-3, playing some of the cleanest tennis of the tournament. Diana was in the stands, but Marcus barely noticed. He was too absorbed in the match, too focused on the immediate challenge. When he won, he looked up at her and smiled, and she smiled back, not with the intensity of someone watching her legacy being continued, but with the simple pleasure of seeing good tennis played well. The final was scheduled for the next day, a Sunday afternoon match on the main stadium court. Marcus's opponent was Derek Williams, the #1 seed, a powerful player from California with a massive serve and aggressive baseline game. They'd never played before, but Marcus had studied video and knew the match would be a war. That night, Eleanor flew in from Queens, insisting she needed to be there for the final. Marcus met her and Diana for dinner at a restaurant near the tennis center, the three of them navigating the awkwardness of an improvised family reunion. "You raised an incredible young man," Diana said to Eleanor, her voice thick with emotion. "I can never thank you enough for that." Eleanor's expression was complicated, still holding anger for her daughter's choice, but softened by the years and by her love for Marcus. "He raised himself, mostly. I just tried to give him stability and love." "You gave me everything," Marcus said, taking his grandmother's hand. "You were there for every match, every practice, every moment I needed someone. You're my mom, Grandma. Diana might have given birth to me, but you're the one who raised me." The words seemed to hit Diana hard, but she nodded. "You're absolutely right. I gave birth, but I wasn't a mother. I'm grateful Marcus had you, Mom. I'm grateful he wasn't alone because of my choices." The dinner was emotional and cathartic. 3 generations of Chen women and Marcus trying to figure out how to be some version of a family. It wasn't perfect or easy, but it was honest. The morning of the final, Marcus woke up calm. No jangling nerves, no obsessive thoughts about Diana watching, no desperate need to prove his worth. He was simply ready to play tennis, to compete at the highest level he could, and to see what happened. Robert noticed the change immediately. "You're different today." "I feel different. Lighter. Like I've been carrying a backpack full of rocks and someone finally convinced me to put it down." The stadium was packed for the final. Thousands of spectators gathered to watch the best junior players in the country compete for the national championship. Marcus saw Diana and Eleanor sitting together in the players' box, an odd pairing united by their connection to him. Derek Williams was everything the scouting report said he'd be: powerful, aggressive, and confident. His serve was enormous, regularly hitting 130 miles per hour. His forehand was a weapon that could end points in a single shot. But Marcus was ready. The first set was a showcase of contrasting styles. Derek tried to overpower Marcus with pace and aggression. Marcus used angles and variation, mixing pace and spin, pulling Derek out of his comfort zone. The set went to a tiebreak, which Marcus won 7-5 with a perfectly executed drop shot that Derek had no chance to reach. The second set was when Derek adjusted, serving better and hitting out more confidently. He broke Marcus in the 7th game and served out the set 6-4. As they sat during the changeover before the third set, Marcus felt the familiar pressure building, the sense that everything was on the line, that victory or defeat would define him. But then he thought about his conversation with Diana, about joy versus addiction, about playing for the right reasons, about the fact that his worth as a person had nothing to do with the outcome of this match.
He looked up at the players' box and saw Eleanor and Diana sitting side by side, both of them watching intently. Two women who had shaped his life in completely different ways, both flawed, both trying their best. And Marcus realized that he didn't need to win this match to prove anything to either of them. He was already worthy of love. He already mattered. That realization didn't make him play worse, it made him play better. Freed from the crushing weight of using tennis to fill an emotional void, Marcus played with creativity and joy. He moved with fluid grace, struck the ball with confident precision, competed with fierce intensity but without desperation. The third set was a masterpiece. Both players raised their level, producing tennis that had the crowd gasping and cheering. Marcus broke Derek in the fourth game, held serve throughout, and found himself serving for the championship at 5-4. As he walked to the baseline, Marcus took a moment to appreciate where he was. The USTA National Tennis Center, the same place Diana had won 17 years ago. The championship match, the culmination of years of training and sacrifice. But more than that, the moment represented something larger, a reconciliation with his past, an acceptance of his complicated family history, a choice to play tennis for himself rather than for someone else's approval. His first serve was long, the adrenaline making him overhit. The second serve was more conservative, and Derek attacked it, hitting a sharp return that Marcus barely managed to handle. They rallied, both players refusing to give an inch, until Derek sent a forehand long. 15-love. The next point was shorter. Marcus served wide to Derek's backhand, came in behind it, and put away a crisp volley. 30-love. 2 points from the championship. Marcus bounced the ball at the baseline, his heart hammering but his mind clear.
He served down the tee, and Derek crushed a forehand return that Marcus could only watch. 30-15. On the next point, they played another long rally, trading ground strokes from the baseline, both players probing for weaknesses. Finally, Marcus created an opening and rifled a forehand winner down the line. 40-15. Championship point. Marcus took his time preparing to serve, bouncing the ball, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of the moment without being crushed by it. He looked up at Diana and Eleanor one more time, saw them both leaning forward with anticipation, and felt a surge of gratitude for the complicated, imperfect family he'd somehow accumulated. The serve went in. A kick serve to Derek's backhand that jumped high and pushed him back. Derek's return floated deep, and Marcus moved in, setting up for a forehand. He struck the ball cleanly, directing it cross-court with topspin and pace, aiming for the corner. Derek dove but couldn't reach it. The ball caught the line and bounced into the backstop. Marcus Chen, at 17 years old, had won the USTA Boys 18's National Championship. The crowd erupted. Robert was on his feet, pumping his fist. Eleanor was crying and cheering simultaneously, and Diana was standing with her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face, pride and regret and joy all visible in her expression. Marcus didn't celebrate wildly. He didn't scream or fall to his knees or throw his racket in the air. He simply smiled, a genuine smile of satisfaction and accomplishment. He'd done it, not for Diana, not to prove his worth, but for himself. And that made all the difference. Derek came to the net and hugged him warmly. Incredible match, man. You deserve that. You played amazing. Could have gone either way. The trophy ceremony was a blur. Handshakes with officials, the presentation of the championship trophy, photographs with the trophy held high.
Through it all, Marcus felt present in the moment, grateful rather than desperately triumphant. When it was over, when the official obligations were complete, Marcus walked to the players' box where Eleanor and Diana were waiting. Eleanor hugged him first, holding him tight and whispering, "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart, so incredibly proud." Then Diana, hesitant but hopeful. Marcus hugged her too, feeling less awkward this time. "Thank you for coming," he said. "It meant a lot to have you here." "You were extraordinary," Diana said, her voice shaking. "Not just the tennis, though that was brilliant, but the way you played, with joy, with freedom. That's something I never learned." "You taught me what not to do," Marcus said gently.
That's valuable too. They spent an hour in the players' lounge, the three of them and Robert, processing the victory and the emotional journey that had led to it. Journalists wanted interviews, agents wanted meetings, but Marcus pushed it all aside for this moment with the people who mattered most. Finally, as the sun began to set and the tennis center emptied out, Diana stood to leave. I have a flight back to California tonight, but Marcus, I want you to know I'm not going to disappear again. If you'll let me, I'd like to be part of your life, not as the mother I should have been, but as something, whatever you're comfortable with. I'd like that, Marcus said, and he meant it. I'm not ready to call you Mom. I'm not sure I'll ever be ready for that. But Diana, a complicated, imperfect person who happens to be my biological mother and who I'm slowly getting to know, that I can do. Diana laughed through her tears. That sounds perfect. She hugged him one more time, then Eleanor, and then she was gone, walking out of the tennis center and back into her life. Eleanor stayed with Marcus and Robert, helping him pack up his gear and prepare for the journey back to Queens.
As they walked through the corridors of the tennis center, passing photographs of past champions, including a young Diana Chen holding the same trophy Marcus now carried, Eleanor spoke. "I'm proud of how you handled all this," she said. "The tennis was impressive, but the way you dealt with Diana, the way you stood up for yourself and set boundaries while still being open to connection, that was the real victory." Marcus looked at the trophy in his hands, its metal surface reflecting the dim corridor lighting. "You know what's funny? I spent years thinking this trophy would make me feel complete, like winning what Diana won would somehow prove I mattered. But now that I have it, I realize it's just a trophy. Nice to have, nice to accomplish, but not the thing that defines me." "So what does define you?" Eleanor asked. Marcus thought about the question as they emerged from the tennis center into the warm summer night. "I don't know yet. I'm 17. I'm still figuring it out. But I know I'm more than just a tennis player. I'm a grandson who's been loved unconditionally. I'm someone trying to build a relationship with a difficult parent. I'm a competitor who loves the challenge of the game. I'm all of that and more." "That's wisdom beyond your years," Eleanor said, taking his hand. They drove back to Queens, the trophy secure in Marcus's bag, alongside the old photograph of Diana, the same photograph he'd carried through hundreds of matches. But now it felt different, less like a talisman of longing and more like a reminder of where he'd come from and how far he'd traveled. Epilogue. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the airport, his bags packed for his first professional tournament in Australia. At 17, he'd turned pro with the blessing of his support team, ready to test himself at the next level. His phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "Good luck in Melbourne. Remember, joy first, results second. You've got this. Diana." Eleanor was beside him at the airport, having insisted on seeing him off despite the early morning hour. "You call me when you land," she said for the third time, her concern evident. "I will, Grandma, I promise. And remember, this is an adventure. Win or lose, you're learning and growing and becoming the person you're meant to be." Marcus hugged her, feeling grateful for her grounded wisdom. Then Robert appeared, carrying coffee for both of them, ready to board the flight as Marcus's coach for the foreseeable future. As they walked toward security, Marcus's phone buzzed with one more message, this time from a group chat Diana had created, the Chen team, that included Eleanor, Diana, Robert, and Marcus. Diana: "First pro tournament! This is exciting!" Eleanor: "Be safe, eat well, don't forget to sleep." Robert: "We've prepared for this. Trust your training." Marcus smiled at the disparate parenting styles on display. Diana's enthusiasm, Eleanor's mothering, Robert's practical wisdom. This weird, improvised family wasn't traditional, wasn't perfect, but it was his. He typed back, "Thanks, everyone. Win or lose, I'm playing for the joy of it. See you in a few weeks." As he cleared security and headed toward his gate, Marcus felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for most of his young life. He was a professional tennis player, yes.
He was chasing his dreams, yes.
But he was also more than that. More than his victories, more than his relationship with Diana, more than the pain of abandonment or the triumph of reconciliation. He was Marcus Chen, 17 years old, complicated and still figuring things out, but finally playing tennis for the right reasons. And that, he realized, was the real championship, not the trophy from the USTA tournament, but the internal victory of becoming someone who could pursue excellence without sacrificing joy, who could compete fiercely without being consumed by desperation, who could love tennis without needing it to fill the empty spaces inside. The gate attendant called his boarding group. Marcus adjusted his tennis bag, the photograph of Diana still tucked in the front pocket, but now accompanied by a photo of Eleanor and a candid shot of Robert caught mid-instruction, and walked toward the plane. The future was uncertain. His professional career might soar or stall, his relationship with Diana might deepen or remain complicated. But for the first time in his life, Marcus felt ready to face that uncertainty without needing tennis to provide all the answers. He boarded the plane, found his seat, and looked out the window as New York City fell away beneath him. Somewhere down there was the tennis center where he'd won the championship. Somewhere was the apartment in Queens where Eleanor was already worrying about him. Somewhere was Diana, trying to figure out how to be a better parent 17 years too late. And here, on this plane heading to the other side of the world, was Marcus. Finally free to play tennis, not because he needed to prove something, but because he genuinely loved the game. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Marcus pulled out a notebook and began writing, documenting his thoughts and feelings about the past few weeks.
It was something Diana had suggested. Keeping a journal to stay grounded, to remember that life was about more than just tournament results. He wrote about the trophy, about the reconciliation with Diana, about Eleanor's unconditional love, about Robert's patient coaching. But mostly, he wrote about the moment in the final, when he'd realized that his worth had nothing to do with the outcome of the match, and how that realization had paradoxically made him play better than ever before. The Australian tournament loomed ahead. New challenges, stronger competition, the beginning of a professional career that might last years or might end quickly. But Marcus was ready. Not because he had all the answers, or because he'd resolved all his issues with Diana, but because he finally knew why he played. Not for redemption, not for validation, not to win back the mother who had left, but for the pure, complicated joy of competition, for the satisfaction of testing himself, for the love of a game that had given him so much even as he'd asked too much of it. The plane hummed through the night sky, carrying Marcus toward his future, uncertain, challenging, full of possibility. And for the first time in his 17 years, that was enough. The end.